Hi, welcome. Welcome to the ArtPrize Speaker Series. I'm Kevin Beist, Director of Exhibitions for ArtPrize. I want to say thank you to Kendall College of Art and Design at Fair State University for underwriting the Speaker Series. This program would not be possible without their generous support. Also, Kendall is an exhibition center this year, so you can register to vote and buy ArtPrize merchandise in their Fountain Street location across the street. And don't miss the show downstairs. ArtPrize is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You can become a member to join the movement and enjoy year-round benefits like premier access to events and receptions, retail discounts, and priority event seating. Please visit artprize.org/membership or visit the membership desk at the hub located at 41 Sheldon. Tonight we're thrilled to welcome Theaster Gates, an artist based in Chicago. Theaster is an artist and cultural planner. His performances, installations, and urban interventions, Gates transforms spaces, institutions, traditions, and perceptions. Gates' training as an urban planner and sculptor and subsequent time spent studying clay has given him a keen awareness of the poetics of production and systems of organizing. Playing with these poetic and systemic interests, Gates has assembled gospel choirs, formed temporary unions, and used systems of mass production as a way of understanding, as a way of underscoring the need that industry has for the body. Gates was a participating artist in dOCUMENTA 13 in Kassel, Germany, the 2010 Whitney Biennial, and many other prominent exhibitions. Please welcome Theaster Gates.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's really great to be here and to have been asked to be a juror for ArtPrize. I'm just wondering if the artists who are participating in ArtPrize could raise their hands. Awesome. You guys should give them an applause. Yeah. One of the topics I wanted to tackle this evening is how the idea of a prize, how that works to kind of move our practice forward, and then maybe how the prize is a challenge also in our growth and how it takes us outside of our desire to make for very personal reasons and then puts it back into this need to make a body of work for a public. But we're gonna kind of tackle that, and then I'm gonna tackle the idea of making and economy via the kind of challenges I'm having with my own practice, and kind of be real open with you guys about that. Let's see what happens. This works okay. Is this okay? When Kevin asked me what I wanted to talk about, I really kind of tried to give thought to how complicated it is when a small city is trying to insert itself in the larger sphere of our nation's cities. And we want to incentivize creativity among the people who are from a place. We want to keep them in a place. We want to encourage economic development. We want to increase the number of housing opportunities for artists, increase the cultural vitality of our cities. We do all these things, and to do it, we leverage the creative tendencies of the people who live here. Now, on one level, that's awesome that money would be made available to stir the pot, to get all of the creatives that are in and around the western and northern Michigan area, in and around the Rust Belt region, and give them a reason, $100,000 reason, a $20,000 reason to be participants in what could potentially be a very transformative moment. But I'm talking about this in relationship to the challenges of a market. That is, there are ways in which I want to, as an artist, I want to make things. I want to make things sometimes from the things that are around me, like in other cities, Grand Rapids or Chicago or Detroit. We have these cities that have lots of excess things that are no longer needed. We're always trying to figure out how do we make meaning of our own lives and of these things. How do we make meaning of the spaces that are available to us that are neglected? And so I spend a lot of time thinking about these problems. How do we take things that are lesser seen, lesser known, people are less interested in them, places that people are less interested in, and how do we activate those things? You're looking at a building that had been abandoned for maybe 5 or 6 years in my neighborhood. Before that, it had been a place where deviance happened for maybe over a decade. Drugs were sold there. People had amazing sexual encounters there. There were very aggressive disagreement that would happen there. There would be brushes between things that were considered legal and people who considered themselves legal and legit, and other people who were considered illegals and illegitimate. It's called my neighborhood. It's a great place. It's very exciting to be there. My neighbors were really nice. But, after a while, looking at abandoned buildings is a bit of a challenge. It's an eyesore. Sometimes the good things you want to do in a place you can't do them because there's all this bad stuff that's happening. You're afraid for your kids to walk around. So I decided that I would start to kind of think about these abandoned spaces and some of this leftover stuff as the beginning of a site for artistic engagement. We eventually were able to acquire, this building for very little money and restore it. And we've started having these soul food ritual dinners where, people from the block and then people from around the neighborhood and throughout the city come together for this really tight, by the minute ritual thing with very famous chefs. And the folk that are on the block are excited because they think, maybe somebody from the city will come and I'll be able to give me a good city job. The folk that are from throughout the city, the cultural workers, they're looking for the thrill of violence and potential black badness, and they're very excited to come there. And when people get there, they actually find unexpected things that people from all over the world are coming through, that people are visiting, and that folk on the block also work for the city, and that in fact the people who they were expecting to see as backwards and redneck are the most intelligible, well-informed. We're the salt of the earth. We just live in places that people don't think about a whole lot. And so in many ways, walking through the buildings today in Grand Rapids and thinking about the possibility that's loaded in these buildings and the great things that people have done to wake these buildings up was really exciting for me. To look at certain bodies of work by artists and think that in many ways, like my own practice, we're trying to make meaning out of things that people think are meaningless. The beauty of ArtPrize then is that it teases out this desire in us to make the most ambitious work possible. That it gives us an opportunity and a platform for 1,500 artists to do their thing in a place that before ArtPrize was lesser known or was not thought about as a kind of regional or national center for the arts. It's amazing what $1 million or $100,000 or $5,000, it's amazing what a little bit of cash can do to kind of activate people's desire to participate. And I'm actually on both sides of this, really excited about this. So back to this building, 6901 South Dorchester. I bought the building for $18,000. The building was like 4,500 square feet if you include the basement. Gorgeous bones, y'all know the story. Nice brick, structurally sound. You know, there was some water damage here or there. There had been a fire, yeah. But after that $18,000 that I borrowed from my mom, my dad, my sister, a short loan from the university, an inflated loan from the bank, I didn't have any money to actually restore the building. Right? And so the building was left to be just art for about a year. Art because that was about all I could do at the time to care for the building. Around the same time, I was asked to participate in this exhibition called dOCUMENTA in Germany. And so what I did was I thought, well, maybe there's a way that I can use the guts of the building, since the building has to be gutted anyway, and dOCUMENTA might give me some cash for production. Maybe I can suggest that I want to use the guts of this building to make a body of work. So I said, look, I'd like to use the guts of this building to maybe mend or patch or care for a building in Kassel. And in order to do this, I want to work with some local guys from the block and some really skilled guys. I want us to deconstruct the building's interior, and make some work of it, and then ship the rest to Germany along with the guys who did this. And so they went for it. They were like, this is great, Theaster, we love this idea. This is so like Joseph Boys. This is great, we love you. And they freed up $40,000. That became my kind of pre-production cost. And that $40,000 allowed me to retain two amazingly skilled builders, a guy named John Puss, a guy named Tad Cowan, and three kids, one from the block and two from around the neighborhood, who were enthusiastic, super respectful, and I could trust that they wouldn't like lose a finger with the chop saw. So we're looking at Nick, who has become a really exceptional young designer in Chicago. So I paired these five guys together, and the six of us, we gutted the building and then got these materials back to the house, back to the studio, and we started thinking about like, what can we do with all this gosh darn lath? You know, what can we do with these 2x6s and 2x4s that could actually be kind of innovative? And we decided that we would use the lath as a way of demonstrating building technique, that the guys would have the responsibility of denailing, sanding, planing sometimes, and then countersinking, screwing, pre-drilling, like really simple stuff, hammering, and they made hundreds of these structures, these kind of modular units that we weren't sure what we would do yet, but we just thought, man, if we could take these modular units, and if there's a portion of a wall that's really damaged, we could maybe use the modular unit and then plaster it and do something really cool. That we were really not thinking about art production as much as we were caring for these materials that would then care for this house. Well, once I told dOCUMENTA that I wanted the 6 of us to come to dOCUMENTA and care for the house over 4 or 5 months, they knew that there was no way budget-wise that they'd be able to afford to have us there. So I asked if we'd be able to stay in the house, the Huguenot house is what we call it. Could we stay in the building while we worked on it and cared for it? And then could we use these materials that we were taking out of the Dorchester building as the materials that we use for furniture, armoire, bed, tables. And so what you're looking at is Tony doing the first prototype of a bed that we eventually had 12 or 13 of in Germany. Around the same time, other museum opportunities were coming up. This is at the Los Angeles Museum of Contemporary Art. All right. And this standing throne is about 11 feet tall. It still looks a little bit dwarfed in the LA local space, but it gave me an opportunity to really consider this material in a transformative way. Reimagining it as something that was actually quite special. There were other objects, other things that at the same time were coming into my life. Around the same time, there was a record store in Chicago called Dr. Wax. And Dr. Wax was a South Side, Jewish-owned soul music, disco, jazz, gospel. It was this record store. The guy's rent was going up, and he was done with it. He was like, my wife's going to divorce me. I got to get out of this racket, and I'm selling all the albums for $1 a piece. And so I asked him, like, is there a way that we could think about this as a collection of albums and take all of this stuff that he was about to kind of get rid of and turn it into something that was a little bit more special? He agreed, and I ended up getting about maybe near 8,000 albums. This kind of canon of Black American music, plus a little bit of Beatles, a couple of JFK speeches, things that were kind of loosely associated with blackness. And so I was really excited to get the collection, but I also wanted to figure out ways that these things that were being discarded could become public. I got a call from the Seattle Art Museum, and they said, look, we'd like to work with you to do a show. What do you think? And I said, well, I got these albums. Could we convert one of your spaces into like a listening room? And so they agreed, and we shipped all the albums, and while the albums were there, we were able to then recatalog the albums, care for them, clean them, make some podcasts. We made like 250 podcasts because DJs would come in and spin every day or every couple hours. And then there were areas in the middle where these chairs are. There's some little crates there that we made. And people could come and thumb through, put things in, take things out, listen. Again, taking these things that are quite ordinary and attempting to make them special, and maybe also doing that with some sensitivity to these moments that are pleasureful moments, that are sometimes communal moments. They're not always moments that can be monetized. That sometimes the greater works are the works that land in a place, and we make the bodies of work out of belief, not out of an attempt, out of belief. And that if we continue to kind of move from this position of, I make this because I really believe in it. Like, it was so great to see Israel walk in. Israel is an amazing craftsman, artist who teaches here at Kendall. And as soon as I saw him, I just thought, like, that brother makes because he really believes in the things that he makes. He believes, has confidence in the ability of his hands, has anxiety over where things land. Like, if it ain't the right owner, I don't want him to have it. And I think that it's important that the craftsman ethic in me, that there are things that are okay and then there's some things that are not okay. And that you have a kind of meter of your own. That I like this push and pull between things that are not for sale, like y'all ain't getting my Dr. Wax album, and then things that are for sale, like this civil rights tapestry made out of decommissioned fire hoses. These small stools that are made from the subflooring, the floorboards of an old police station in Chicago. Really trying to think about these moments that are poetic in our city, where these systems that have the potential to be oppressive systems also have the potential to be the systems that hold us up. And so on and so on. Objects that are referencing a place that are things that seem useless on their surface, but have the capacity that with the right framing can be quite handy and quite potent. I thought I'd take a second to just talk about performance too, as a way of thinking about a kind of ethic around why I make. That there are moments when the topics that I want to talk about as a maker. I remember when I was just making things from clay, the material by itself, either because of the limitations of my ability to use clay to manipulate it in a way, or because the material had inherent limitations, clay couldn't always say what I wanted it to say. There are other times when these materials that I'm using in Chicago, these industrial materials, these materials that come out of homes, they come loaded with such a big narrative already that they start to guide people in one direction when I'm actually not trying to say that. Like I'm not trying to talk about upcycling. I'm not a sustainable artist. I don't know what that means. I'm not a green machine. But these materials, like it or not, clay, wood, an old building, they're signifiers. They carry information. And I found that sometimes it was better for me to be free of the object altogether. And so there would be moments where the best thing that I could do was perform in some of these spaces. That the performance could suggest things that a video by itself couldn't, or that an object. And performance allowed me to connect those parts that were more about maybe my history with sacred spaces, more than it was my interest in Jasper Johns or Robert Rauschenberg. So I would perform, and I would say things like, they tried to take my daddy's building under eminent domain. They tried to take my daddy's building under eminent domain. They wanted to build a Walgreens. Now isn't that a shame? He started working on his building, then they slapped him with a lien. He started working on his building, then they slapped him with a lien. Oh, Ram, oh, Daly, why you gotta be so mean? That performance was a way that I could allow other friends who were outside of the contemporary art world, outside of the craft world, outside of the white cultural sphere, I could allow them in, and the brevity of possibility made the object, which might be this building, it made this object come alive in a new way. We were able to breathe new life in it. And those videos of us performing as the demolition was happening, those videos became as potent as the reuse of the laugh. It's also really exciting that now that the building's done, we can sing in it with heat and with air conditioning, and that it's in fact the guts of the building that paid for the building. And so I wanna end with a short video that really makes clearer my complicated relationship with the market, because I think that in Resolve I recognize that markets aren't pure or impure, that money ain't dirty or clean, that our involvement with galleries or our disassociation with the art sphere, those things are actually value neutral to me. And that the thing that I'm having to guard is why I make. Even that question of why I make isn't necessarily a question of right or wrong. It's more about, where does ambition come from? Where does it live inside me? How does it want to manifest itself? And so it's really exciting to see artists having the highest ambition possible. And if that artistry is needlepoint or 300 used vehicles, that I think that the whole sphere has the right to be as ambitious as possible in order to make the best work possible. The other thing that's become really clear about being here in Grand Rapids is that me as a juror and what my taste is going to be very different from what a public's taste is. That's like how a work becomes popular is fascinating. And so to us all, let us leave with a lightheartedness that no matter where things land in the prize, that the complicated set of people associated that make the decision, they weigh no bearing on how great and masterful we'll become if we continue to be diligent. That the prize actually isn't just a pat on your back. It's actually trying to do all this other shit that has nothing to do with art or you. That the prize is actually trying to say that art matters in Grand Rapids, period. That art matters in the Midwest. That small places can have potency beyond places like New York and London and LA. And so I think it goes back to this strategy of belief and having ways in which if there's any artist's prayer, that prayer would be that we push to make the most exceptional thing that we can. I'm gonna leave you with a 5-minute video. And this video is actually also very loaded because the video was produced by my gallery, White Cube, which is one of the largest galleries in the world. It's in London. When people knew of my practice and they knew that I was going to go to White Cube, they were like, man, you're going to a capitalist machine. Like, why would you ever sell your soul to the devil to do this crazy? They're gonna spit you out like a. So strange, this kind of burden that my friends had for me. And they were like, well, maybe you're going because you are just a capitalist pig. Maybe this is really all your conversations about ambition, Theaster. Maybe it was just driving you in. Like, maybe you're just becoming what you always wanted to be. Right? And then there I felt like in that process of negotiating, I realized that actually all galleries want to make money. That's their job is to act as an intermediary between artists and people who want to buy art. They do whatever they do. Sold. Whatever they do that with the ambition that they'll make 50% of whatever the value of my work is. Another crazy thing. And so I wanted to kind of use this as an opportunity to show how I move between a highly capital-driven market and maintaining some sense of body of work that I believe in. You know, sometimes they're born from a singular material that I'm dying to work with, or a singular subject. In the case of the show that's coming up in the key, I also, in addition to the content that I was interested in, I had to also consider space, the space limitations, or the space implications. There were a set of ideas that I wanted to talk about in London that seemed relevant for me in the wake of recent activities, social activities in London. And so for this one, it was a combination of materials that came together at this moment when I was thinking about London, the possibility of space, and my ability to imagine a first exhibition in London. That was quite ambitious.
Let's look at the Biennial archive, because there are many aspects of the show that I think will be striking, but it seems to me that's one of the things that moves the show, the idea. Just explain how you came to have that archive, and then your thoughts now as to what you're going to do in London, or what your plans are.
Sure. Well, the heiress of the Johnson Publication Corporation empire is a woman named Linda Johnson. And Linda and I have become good friends. As Linda was thinking about what to do with these collections that had accumulated in Johnson, she considered me for this library, which was the editorial library for Heaven Magazine. I think she considered me because she knew that I had real care, maybe even a kind of obsessive compulsive tendency toward archives, and particularly toward found knowledge. I like the problem of how to think about it, to do with knowledge. And so we just started talking casually about these books that her dad had accumulated, the editors had used. And I thought I would love to give a permanent home to these things, but in advance of that permanent home, I would love to make these things present in the public. So we have somewhere near 15,000 books, and then kind of compendium of print matter that will be shown in the exhibition.
I think it's clear that you have very strong social and political engagement, but it's also clear, talking to you, that whatever your agendas for your artworks, you're not wearing them on your sleeve, that the idea seems to be that you're not just conducting an experiment, but this is something that you're exploring.
Yeah.
And how much are you consciously trying to control, or how much of a preordained idea do you start to have of how the exhibition will be and the expectations of those who come and how they respond? Do you genuinely create a space and let people get on with it?
In this case, my show sincerely started with an opportunity to celebrate this company. And then to within that, think about these things like the civil rights movement, like the idea of where power comes from in different communities. I wanted to think about those things alongside the material, the artifact that was given to me. It's almost like finding a treasure trove when you paint. And so my exhibition is really based on that treasure trove that I found. And it had in it certain limitations. The book collection and fashion fair, they both carry really specific signifiers. And I want to root myself in those signifiers. And then start there, and then grow from there to actually have other conversations. Conversation about labor, the role of performance, the possibility of
What about Raising Goliath? What about the fire truck? Is that a standalone emblematic piece that will greet viewers as they arrive and leave, or is it fully integrated?
So I'll just just talk a little bit about this and open it up to Q&A. This project called Raising Goliath is this truck is about a 1963 Ford fire engine from Peel, Alabama. For the last year and a half, I've been thinking about my relationship to the civil rights movement, and in a way, the fire hoses were my entree into this conversation, and then the fire truck, the kind of capstone. Counterweighting the fire truck is about 8 tons of bound periodicals that were made by the Johnson Publishing Company. Ebony, Jet, Hue, Tan, Negro Digest. That these publications were a kind of parallel universe to Reader's Digest and Life and other periodicals from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, when that great moment of advertisement that kind of left lots of people outside of the American experience. That John Johnson was this kind of pioneer in black advertising. The family, as they were moving out of their this building that he had constructed in Chicago, they were left with all this stuff, and they were like, we can't keep it all. And so I was fortunate enough to receive these things, both these 16,000 books that will become a permanent library, and these 8 tons of bound periodicals. And I wanted to treat them in the most caring and poetic way possible, but also to do this project cost $500,000. And so it's back to like this kind of more complicated, more nuanced relationship of purity, where that comes from. That in fact, to deliver the scale and ambition of project that I needed, it actually needed something that a museum or a private collector alone couldn't afford to do with an artist who's still emerging. It needed a machine that was willing to take risks with me and leverage those risks in different ways. And so I wanted to just kind of use this as a way of saying that my interest in found knowledge and objects is a complicated interest, and one that is both loaded with value and also in meaning, but also a lot of meaninglessness for a lot of people. But I feel like we have to look diligently for the systems and structures that will allow us to do the work that we want. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.